So, what I'd like to do now is, now I would like to develop the unit circle. Remember, the unit circle is the circle centered at the origin with a radius of 1. So it's it's 1 unit, hence the name unit circle. It's 1 unit out from the origin. Okay? There are 16 nice points that are going to be on the unit circle that we're going to use a lot in terms of their degree and radian measures, and then their corresponding x and y values. 4 of those 16 are super duper nice. Okay? Which 4 do you think are the super duper nice ones? Okay, so talk to me. Give me one of them. Pick one of them. Tell me, I want every time, for every point, we're going to find the degree measure. We're going to find the radian measure of the angle. And we're going to find the coordinates of each one. Pick one. Pi. Where is pi? You tell me. It's on the left side of the circle. Okay? So in terms of degrees, what is the degree measure at a radian value of pi? 180 degrees. So straight out over here, oops, oh no, straight out over here is 180 degrees, or pi radians. Is that what you're telling me? Okay, I love it so far. Now, my question to you is, what is the coordinates of that point on the unit circle? -1, 0. I would concur with all of that information for that one. 1 down, 15 to go. What's another nice one? 0. Where is 0 degrees? On the right side of my unit circle. If this is 0 degrees, how many radians is it? It's also 0 radians. What is the coordinates then of the point that is on the unit circle at 0 degrees, 0 radians? 1, 0. Does that point have any other degree or radian measures associated with it? It's also 360 degrees. Or how many radians? 2 pi radians. Two down. 14 to go. Exciting. 2 more uber nice ones. Pi over 2 is where? The top is pi over 2. And that's in terms of radians, correct? In terms of degrees, how many degrees would the top be? 90 degrees. So up here is 90 degrees, or pi over 2 radians. And Seth, what would the coordinates be of that point? 0, 1. Three down. 13 to go. 1 more nice one. Where is 3 pi over 2? And that's radians, right? Okay. Degrees, it would be 270 degrees. Do we agree with that? Okay, so down here we have a point on the unit circle. It's at 270 degrees, or 3 pi over 2 radians. And what would the coordinate be of that point? Express says 0, -1. Do we concur? Love it. That brings us to 4 points on the unit circle. However, that ends the nice ones. Correct? Okay. So, 2 things that we have to do. 1, we have to finish off the other 12 points that are on the circle. But before we can do that, let's take a pause for the cause and let's learn how to count radians. Okay? In terms of counting radians, if you saw, are going to sometimes be in fractional form. Okay? The only 2 points on the unit circle that are not in fractional form are 0 and pi. Those are the only 2 that aren't in fractional form. All 14 other ones are going to be in fractions. So what I want to refresh your memory about is that 1 is also equal to 2 over 2, 3 over 3, 4 over 4, and 6 over 6. Right? Which means that pi is equal to 2 pi over 2, 3 pi over 3, 4 pi over 4, and 6 pi over 6.
Is there no 5?
Not on our unit circle.
It's just not?
Because it's not neat. Because 360 degrees divided by 5 is what? 72. Okay? And 72 is not a nice, easy, one to go all the way around. So that's why we don't do over 5. Okay? So we got that. Okay? Good to know. Okay? Very good to know. Now, let me go back to my unit circle. Okay? One of the things that I taught my family a while ago was somebody had asked me about 25%. They're like, well, what's 25% of this? And I said, well, 25% is half of half. So you divide it in half, and then you divide the half in half. That's 25%, right? Well, if I look at the top half of my unit circle, that's equal to 1 pi, right? If I divide that in half, I'm at the top. And if I divide that in half, now I am here. Okay? So pi cut in half is pi over 2. What's pi over 2 cut in half? Pi over 4. Okay? If 180 is over here, cut it in half gets me 90. 90 cut in half is 45. So this is 45 degrees, or pi over 4 radians. Now, in a utopian world, that coordinates of that red dot would be 1/2, 1/2. Right? But 1/2, 1/2 is not on the unit circle. That point is not on the unit circle because 1/2 squared plus 1/2 squared is not equal to 1. It's only equal to 1/2. we have to do some maths to figure out the coordinates of that point. And that maths is the maths that you did over the weekend or prior to this class. That was the video that you were supposed to do. It makes a special right triangle. We have a 45-degree angle going on right there. Now, over the course of on the video that you were supposed to watch, these sides of the triangle were equal to 1, and the hypotenuse was equal to the square root of 2. But if I take this, if I take the square root of 2 and I divide it by the square root of 2, now I get my hypotenuse is 1, because that's the unit circle. The unit circle has a hypotenuse of 1. And then I take my 1 over here, this was 1, and I divide it by the square root of 2. Actually, let me go down here and say this was 1. I divided it by the square root of 2. And to rationalize that denominator, I multiply by the square root of 2 over the square root of 2. And that gives me the square root of 2 divided by the square root of 2. Okay? So remember, x is my horizontal distance to get to the point. Y is my vertical distance to get to the point. In this particular case, I am going to if this was my origin, and this was the point on the unit circle, I would go the square root of 2 over 2, and then up the square root of 2 over 2, so that the coordinates of this point are the square root of 2 over 2, comma, the square root of 2 over 2. The nice thing about a circle is that no matter where you cut it, it is symmetric. Okay? Which means that it has reflexive powers. So if I cut it down the y-axis and I fold it over, that tells me then that this point is also going to be the square root of 2 now over 2, now to the left, and the square root of 2 over 2 up. So the coordinates of this point are going to be negative square root of 2 over 2 and positive square root 2 over 2 are going to be the coordinates of that point. Degree and radian wise, it's halfway between 90 and 180. What's 90 plus 180 divided by 2? Or what is the degree measure halfway between 180 and 90? Anybody? (135 degrees). Counting radians again. Here, if I started here and I went to here, that got me pi over 4. Then I go to here, that's another pi over 4, right? Pi over 4 plus pi over 4 is 2 pi's over 4, which reduces to be pi over 2. If I go another pi over 4, now how many pi over 4s have I gone? 3, so this is 3 pi over 4 radians. Move that down. If I go another pi over 4, now I'm at 4 pi over 4, which is pi, correct? Okay, so I'm already there, I already got that coordinate. Okay. If I go another pi over 4, I'm now at 5 pi over 4 in terms of radians. What is the degree measure associated with that one? Halfway between 180 and 270. Don't be afraid. That's all I heard. Sorry. Here, what do you got? 225. I saw you whisper. That's why I knew you were right. Okay. What is the coordinates associated with that one? Both negative? Oops, I don't like that already. I gotta move this around here. Tap the breakeths. Right? Take a couple of seconds and find me degree, radian, and coordinates of this point right there. Degree, 315. Radian, coordinates, square root 2 over 2, comma, negative square root 2 over 2. Okay? 8 points on our circle. Halfway there to 16. Okay? So I reset it. So now we've got a couple more to do. We got halfway there. All right? So let's look now at this point right there. I am here. How many degrees did I go up? It is not half. It's not half of half of half. Because then these two parts are not equal. Right? But if we kind of look at it, it looks as if here is one part, here is one part, and there is, so it looks like we divided it into thirds, right? So 90 divided by 3 is 30. So this appears to be, and it is, 30 degrees. In terms of radians, how many radians is that? Right? Pi over 6. Okay. So what I did is I broke out just that little part because I wanted to talk about the fact that this really makes a 30, 60, 90 right triangle. And it's the other special right triangle from the video that you were supposed to watch. Now, you watched it on when we said that we looked at the short leg of our 30, 60, 90 triangle. Okay? And the short leg is going to, or twice the short leg is going to get me the hypotenuse of that triangle. And the short leg times the square root of 3 is going to get me the other leg of that triangle. Well, we also now have our hypotenuse is equal to 1, because that's the radius of our circle. If the hypotenuse is equal to 1, in this case, which it is, what is the length of the short leg? If the hypotenuse is equal to 1, what's the length of the short leg? 1/2. We cut it in half, which means that this over here is going to be 1/2. If the length of the short leg of our triangle is 1/2, what is the length of the long leg? Or the missing leg that we have. If A is 1/2, what's the length of the missing leg? Square root 3 over 2. Which would be this side down here. Okay. Now, in your mind, because we're going to have 4 of those triangles, in your mind you're going to have to kind of bend that triangle around to make it fit in all of the parts. Okay? So, let's go back here to, there it is, to this one. So now, with that being said, horizontally, we went the square root 3 over 2. Vertically, we went 1/2. So the coordinates here of this point are going to be the square root of 3 over 2, comma, 1/2. What I would like you to do now is, based off of that fact that's written in green there, I would like you to find me the coordinates, the degree measure, and the radian measure for that green point, this green point, and that green point. So for the 3 green points, I want degree, radian, and coordinates for those points. Go. Hopefully on the video they've paused it by now, and they are also doing that. Volunteer. The green point in quadrant number 2. Degree measure. Somebody that hasn't talked yet today, or hasn't talked a lot yet, so somebody not up here at the front table. Anybody? Go ahead, start us off.
At 150 degrees.
I like 150 degrees.
Would be 5 pi over 6 radians.
Which would be 5 pi over 6 radians.
And they're going to be negative square root of 3 over 2, comma, 1/2.
I love everything about that. Good job. Okay. My quadrant 3 green point. Don't make me start calling on people. Question? Not 195 degrees. Don't like it off the start. Because remember, this gap here is 30 degrees. Still don't like it. 210? Because we're at 180, we go 30 more, that's 210 degrees, right? If I'm counting by pies, or by radian measures, right, it's pi over 6, right? Well, this is 6 pi over 6 at 180 degrees, or pi, right? So 6 pi over 6 plus 1 more pi over 6 would be 7 pi over 6. Chance to redeem yourself, though, with the coordinates. Square root of 3? And? Good redemption.
Wait, how did you get for the one up there, how did you get the 5 pi over 6?
Well, I personally went to 6 pi over 6, which is just pi, and I subtracted off 1 pi over 6. So 6 pi over 6 minus 1 pi over 6 is 5 pi over 6. Okay. And the quadrant 4 one. Anybody want to volunteer for that one? Or I pick. Going once. Going twice. You just answered one. Going once. Going twice. Lisa, what do you got? 330 degrees, I like that. Did you get a radian measure? 11 pi over 6. Love it. And a coordinate. Love it. Love everything about it. Good job.
How did you get 11 now?
How did we get 11? Because 2 pi is 12 pi over 6. Right? 12 divided by 6 is 2. So 2 pi is at 12 pi over 6. And I go back 1, so I subtract off a pi over 6. Gets me 11 pi over 6. Okay? Love it. Okay? Now, the nice thing about the remaining ones, and we have 4 remaining points on our unit circle. The nice thing about those is if we said before, if this was 30 degrees, and then this was 30 degrees, altogether that makes 60 degrees. So that would make this then also be 30 degrees. So the nice part about that is that we've already done all the math that goes along with 60 degrees or pi over 3 radians. Because it's another 30, 60, 90 triangle. Okay? Except this time, it looks like, I don't think I can, oops, this is my flip it. Okay? I don't think I can, I wish I could reflect it somehow. But, oh well. Oh well. So anyways, so now, we'll just do the quadrant 2 one instead. Oops, I went too far. There it goes. So now here is 30, and here is 60, and there is that one. Okay? And so this was 1/2, this was 1, this was the square root of 3 over 2. So now in my quadrant 2 one, this is 120 degrees, or 2 pi over 3. And so then it would be negative 1/2 and positive square root 3 over 2. Because I went in my negative direction and up there. So what would the coordinates in quadrant 1 be? Well, that would be 1/2 and square root 3 over 2. Take a moment now to do quadrants 3 and 4 based off of that. Shout it, shout it, shout it out loud. What's the degree measure down there? 240. Radian measure down there? 4 pi over 3. Coordinates down there?
-1/2, comma, square root 3 over 2.
Yeah. That one in there, degree measure, 300. Radian measure, 5 pi over 3. Coordinates, love it. -3 over 2. Yep, love it. Love it! And that's the Sweet 16, the unit circle. Now, a couple of things about said unit circle. 1, we will give you a nicer copy of this sometime in the near future. Okay? That will have on it all of that information that you just did, but it'll be nice and neat just in case you didn't write neat or miss something or something along those lines. Second thing is this week Friday, the day after tomorrow. Okay? Right? Did I say that right? Yes, the day after tomorrow. Okay? This week Friday, you will have a unit circle memorization quiz where we will give you a blank, completely blank unit circle, and you have to fill it in under 10 minutes. It's a memorization quiz. It is not a do the math quiz. 10 minutes tops.
Is it some of it?
Yes.
But you have to have everything.
You have to have everything. You have to have degree, radian, and coordinates.
Will the lines be in there, or did it show all the lines?
No, it'll be on there for you.
Oh, okay.
You'll just have, all you have to do is fill the stuff in. Now, before you freak out even more, let's talk about how you go about memorizing the unit circle. How many points do you have to memorize on the unit circle?
8, 4.
Points on the unit circle. How many do you have to memorize? Technically, 2. Because everything else is a flip and a flop and a flip, right? The only 2 points that you technically have to memorize are 30 and 45. Because you get the 60, so green, okay, so green is 30, red is 45, right? So the 45 takes care of the other 3 as long as you know the pattern, right? Takes care of the other 3 red points. Memorizing 30 degrees takes care of the 4 green points, and you switch the X and the Y, takes care of the purple points. All that leaves is logic on the 4 extremes, top, bottom, left, and right, which you should be able to logically understand that those are all 1 unit out, because that. Okay? On top of all of that, there's an extra question on the unit circle memorization quiz that looks like this. Okay? What's cosine equal to? What's sine equal to? What's cosecant equal to? What's secant equal to? What's tangent equal to? What's cotangent? Okay? But again, that should, right now, that should be